Cahirlock. And Minister, I'm glad that you're here to take this legislation this evening. And I understand you've had a busy week, so it is very welcome that you found the time to come in. This bill is very simple, and I want to thank my comrade Dr. Cronin for the work that she has put in on this, and not just here, but also, as she's alluded to herself, at committee as well. This issue is a very important one, but we're very lucky and thankful, and I am as a parent myself, that this is not something that will be used by a huge number of people, but for those people who will use it, it's absolutely essential. This will put onto a statutory footing what already happens actually in most workplaces. Most employers will grant without hesitation time off work for someone a parent who is bereaved, but they don't have any guidance and they don't know how much. The worker doesn't know that they can ask. The employer doesn't know what they could give. So essentially what we're talking about doing is codifying what most decent employers do anyway. And then obviously the legislation deals with those employers who maybe don't do the right thing when the opportunity presents itself. But this shouldn't be left as a grace and favour arrangement. This shouldn't be something that a worker has to ask for or has to try to arrange when they have lost a child and when they are in the midst of that grief and in the midst of the turmoil and the turbulence that will come after that. This brings a degree of certainty and it codifies it, because I genuinely believe that most employers will try to do the right thing, but many workers won't ask. If they don't know they have a legal entitlement to it, they won't necessarily ask for that leave, because there is that uncertainty, and coupled with the fact that your whole life is just turned upside down. I actually genuinely, I can't imagine. And when I think about it, and I think about my daughter, and I think about my grandson, I just put it out of my head. I can't think about how awful that would be. But then to have to do something practical, like try to supplement your income, like a lot of people in this state, Minister, and you'll know this. They're living week to week, paycheck to paycheck. They can't afford unpaid time off work. They simply can't. They need to know that when they need this leave, the leave will be available to them. And putting it onto a statutory footing is a very, very important part of that. Look, many parents may never feel ready to return to work, but return to work they must, because the same as everybody else, they have to eat, they have to pay their bills, they have to pay their rent. And the landlord doesn't know that the parent or the worker is bereaved. The person at the tills in Tesco doesn't know if the parent is bereaved. The ESB don't know that the parent is bereaved. So the bills keep coming. The bills keep coming in the middle of all of this. And all this does is it just gives that little bit of certainty. And Minister, I do think your amendment is shameful, and I don't think it's necessary. You know the legislative process. I heard your party leader say the other week it takes 2.5 years to learn the job. Well, here we are. You know the legislative process. You know it's not fast. You know that you can be doing in parallel the work of consultation and anything else that is required. I think it would send a really positive message from this House that we would start that work now instead of kicking it to touch. But another reason why I would be very concerned about your amendment, and it is a tried and tested our government tactic, but I was at committee yesterday and we had retired workers discussing a piece of legislation, and your colleague, former Junior Minister English, had kicked the legislation that they wanted implemented, had kicked it to touch for 12 months to allow for a period of consultation and to allow for all of this, and nothing happened. Nothing happened in the intervening time. I asked the people, were you engaged with, were you consulted? They said, well, we sent in a submission, but nothing happened. That time wasn't used. So, past performance is an indication of future performance, in my opinion. And kicking things to touch and kicking them down the road, this is something that could be done now. We could actually start that work now instead of delaying that work for 12 months. And, Minister, it's not lost on me or anyone else that bereaved parents who are working in the civil service are already entitled to this leave. So that argument has been won. with the government as employers, and you are large employers, that argument's already been won. That concession, if you want to call it, that's been given to those workers. They already have that right. So we don't need to debate the merits and whether or not we need it. I think we can all agree it's a worthwhile thing to do, and indeed that argument has been won on the government side of the House already. I mean, this won't impact on many people, thankfully. But for those who need it, it will mean the absolute world to them. It will be a godsend to them, a small little bit of certainty in the middle of having your whole life turned upside down and ripped to shreds. Minister, if we're all agreed on this, and I think we are, I genuinely don't understand why we have to wait. Go on, Margaret.